Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Ventura County Masters Gardener Speaker Series. This will be first in a series of virtual talks we have planned until we can resume our in-person meetings around the county. The title of the presentation is The Wonderful World of Bees, Tips for a Bee-Friendly Garden. This presentation will be about an hour with time for questions, but we'll ask that everyone stay muted due to the number of people on the call. If you have a question, please use the chat box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many as possible, probably at the end. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Dani Brucius, a master gardener since 2005. She is a sustainable landscape expert with trainings in arboriculture, plant biology, soils, garden pests, and diseases. Dani also has more than a decade of training and community service at our helpline desk. She also specializes in reducing and reusing plant materials in the home landscape with a focus on microclimates and hydrozoning for water savings. And now, Dani Brucius.
Thank you for coming. Before we start this, I want everybody to know I'm not an entomologist. Oh, and I use my hands a lot. I'm sorry if I'm not an entomologist, and I'm really not an expert on bees, but that shows you how much information we have out there with the UC system, because all of this information was gathered pretty much online with the UC sites. And if there are the questions that you might have, if it's something that I haven't researched for this, I might not know your answer. So it might be something to go to the helpline with if we can't answer it. Okay, so first off, a little reminder about the Asian citrus psyllid and Wanglong Bing disease. Check your trees. You're probably not gonna see this guy unless you've got a hand lens, and they move a lot too when they're adults. If they see you coming, they're gonna move to the back. They've always got their rear up in the back. This is what you're gonna see. It's this, this waxy, curly, tubular stuff is what the nymphs produce. And if you have a hand lens, the nymphs look like little Pikachus, if you know what a Pikachu is. The signs are going to be modeling on the leaves of your plant if it does have the disease. And this guy, the Asian citrus psyllid, is the one he's the guy that vectors the disease. And the disease is what kills the trees, and there is no cure. So we really have to find these guys. They say to check your trees once a month. I say if you're out there every week, check them every week. The signs if your tree gets the disease, there's mottling on the leaves, and this is different from like a nutrient deficiency where you will see the same on both sides of the leaf. This is definite mottling. The fruits sometimes are misshapen. The insides are really misshapen. But if you do see this, don't freak out right away, because sometimes if there's damage on the underside of the leaf, it'll show up like this too. And watch out for ants. These little guys can only eat on the tender new growth. So that's where you're gonna look. And if you see ants going up your tree, they like to farm these little guys. So if you help control the ants, you help control these guys too. Our information, our ACP site, and I've got the last slide here. I've got, I think I put this on the resources. I did this at the last minute, but the ACP site has great maps. They're interactive maps. You can go in there, you can see where they found the insect, you can see where they found the disease. You can even see where they've released predators. And then this is what the page looks like here for management strategies if you do find them. Okay, so on to bees. And like I said, I'm not an expert on bees, but I like bees. So this was really easy for me to do. 1/3 of the food we eat depends on pollinators. And while you might not think of like carrots and stuff like that, they don't need pollinators. But if you want to get carrot seeds, you need a pollinator. The pollinators are all the bees, breezes, bugs, birds, beetles, bats, butterflies, and bees. So consider the honeybee, which is probably the most important bee that we have, because they're managed in hives and they're taken to places that, like for the almonds and things like that. They're very social. They work together as a group, and they have a division of labor. So everybody's got a little job. And they communicate. So how do they know? How do they know with this communication? This is one of my hummingbird feeders. Okay, they do something called the waggle dance and the round dance, and it's pretty complex and it's pretty much out of my realm. So really, sometimes I make the wrong turn sometimes coming home from the market. So you can't imagine how wonderful these guys are with communicating. What they do, if it's a close food source, they do a round dance, which just kind of tells the other bees, hey, there's a food source around. If it's farther away in the field, they use the sun and the flight path, and then they position themselves, they come back, they do a figure 8, and this little back and forth that they do in the figure 8 corresponds to how far away the food source is. And how far will a bee go for a food source? As far as they have to. And that's why we want to give them close food sources, because the farther you have to go, the harder it's going to be for them to survive. Okay, so honeybees are dying at troubling rates. And what a lot of people say, oh, it's the pesticides. It's the pesticides are killing all the bees. And it's true, pesticides are killing bees, but there are mites, viruses, diseases, fungi, Climate's a big thing right now because of climate change. Everything seems to be moving up in elevation. And nutrition, if they can't get the food that they need, they are going to decline. So there's this Bee Inform that keeps track of all of the losses in the managed bee colonies. Now this is US losses. So it would be nice to see, I haven't found anything yet about if we have local or California losses. They've been keeping track, I guess, since 2006, maybe before that, but that's as far as this graph goes. They have the, if you see here, they have a total winter loss and a total annual loss, and this little gray bar here is acceptable winter loss. So it's what they determine is acceptable to lose in the managed hives. If you notice this big spike here in the annual loss, that was in 2012, 2013. And like I said, while this is national, this is the whole US, it kind of corresponds with when we were starting to get really big into the drought. But that's just me. That's not scientific. That's just what I see when I look at it. So they just issued this last year's, and nearly 44% of the colonies were lost, which is right up here with the worst year that you see. But the winter losses were the second lowest on record. So we were losing last year, and it showed in my yard from what I had the year before. I noticed a big decline in the bees. So don't forget our native bees. So some are so tiny, you may not even know that they are there. And this is something, this isn't necessarily just bees. It's something new that I found that's pretty interesting. If you want to go check it out, it's called Insect Connect with UCANR. And they've got a lot of insect pictures, and maybe you can ID what you find in your yard. See if it's a good guy or a bad guy, but it's a good, like I said, it's something new for me. It's might be interesting for someone else. So there are over 1,600 native bee species in California. And our native bees, they don't live in hives. 75% are solitary. I know that. They're not in danger of colony collapse because colony collapse only affects honeybees in managed hives. They do not produce harvestable honey, and our pollination services required by crops depend on these guys as much as almost 40% of our crops are pollinated by native bees. And that's why you'll see a lot more of the farmers putting out native plants on the sides of their rows and things like that, because they want to attract these bees. So, excuse me. The native bee numbers are also in decline because of loss of habitat. This is Colorado. This is not what you think of when you think of John Denver and Colorado Rocky Mountain High. And also tilling, where we're pretty much building more on our farmlands instead of expanding, but tilling does destroy native bee nests. So how can you help? Okay, providing food, water, and shelter, and a bee garden. So bee-friendly forage plants have been shown to provide better nutrition. So when they have better nutrition, it helps them fight diseases and pesticides and things like that. And I did include this, the lady, the weightlifter, because guys, it's the girls that do all the hard work in the bee, at least in the beehives and the honeybees. So what is bee nutrition? Okay, pollen and nectar, that's what they need. Pollen's especially important in the spring, nectar in the fall, but they need both of them. So I wanted to include a picture of the corbicula, which is that when you see those little poofs of pollen on the side of the bees, that's the corbicula. That's how they take it back to the hive. If you have a chance of getting a plant that has blue pollen or a different color pollen, you will see these bees with different colors, and it's actually pretty cool. So the first thing you want to do is plant for year-round bloom. So if you've got one flower that's getting ready to fade out, make sure there's another replacement there to take its place, because you want these guys to stick around. You know, if one of them goes and there's not one there to take its place, they're going to leave. They're going to go someplace else. So when you're figuring out your plants for your bees, you want to mix different plant families, flower sizes, flower shapes, and flower colors. So as far as mixing your plant families, some bees are generalists, some are specialists. A good example of that is in the alfalfa fields. They found out when the farmers want to pollinate the alfalfa to get seed for the next year's, the honeybees weren't doing a very good job at it, because what happens is the alfalfa flower, kind of like this little flower here, it's a tiny flower and it's got a petal that's spring-loaded and the pollen's deep inside. And what happens when the bee lands on it and the spring-loaded petal opens up, it hits them in the face. And honeybees don't like to be hit in the face with that. So what they did was they brought in leafcutter bees. And those are the bees that they don't mind being hit in the face. So the production increased immensely when they brought in the leafcutter bees that would release the pollen when they stepped on the little spring-loaded pollen, the spring-loaded petal, while the honeybees were busy trying to sip nectar from the side because they were smart enough not to get hit in the face. So you want to mix your flower sizes and shapes. So a bee's tongue size along with the flower shapes can determine the availability of nectar. So here, this is my baby bear manzanita. This is a little hard to see. This is the bumblebee. The bumblebees seem to love these little urn-shaped flowers. And the flowers seem pretty small for that big bee. You know he's not going to get in there, but his tongue size has to correspond with it, so they're hanging around. Okay, you also want to plant in groups. So bees like floral consistency. So you want to plant in patches of the same plant at least 3 feet square. Now, if you have like this, the Ceanothus Concha, that's a big plant. You only need one of those, but if you have smaller plants, you might want to put 3 or 4 of them together in one spot. And next time I do this, I promise I will take a picture of this in bloom when it isn't trash day. Okay, so UC Davis has a honeybee haven list for plants because you're wondering, you know, what plants do I plant for bees? This is a picture from their site, and you'll notice there's a lot of purple in there. Bees like purple. Also, you can find that list at the UC Berkeley Urban Bee Lab, which it's a good site, you know, and especially if you have kids, it's got a lot of good questions in there. It's an easy to understand site. The reason that I like this plant list, and here it says there's a PDF version. I wasn't able to get into that. They may be updating it. I don't know what's going on with it. But the neat thing about this list is that it gives you the common name, it gives you the scientific name, the plant family, like we said, plant families, you want to mix your plant families. It tells you if it's an annual or perennial, and this is great here. It tells you if it's a pollen or nectar. So you can, you know, adjust so you have pollen plants and nectar plants. And it tells you the bee visitors. And the funny part here is the Arctostaphylos, which is the manzanita. And it says its visitation by bumblebees is low but consistent. And I don't know what the difference is here in my yard, but I get huge numbers of those guys when the Arctostaphylos is in bloom. And that's help a bee. Okay, so when you're thinking of colors for your bee garden, like I said, a lot of these plants that they like are purple. Think of complementary colors, usually work out well. So those are colors that are opposite on the color wheel. But when you're thinking of the best colors for a bee garden, know that their vision is different than human vision. So this is what the bees see, and they see into ultraviolet, and this is what we see, and we don't see that ultraviolet. And you might think that, okay, I've got red poppies, that these bees are always on the red poppies, but you're telling me they don't see red. Well, we don't know, we can't see the ultraviolet. Chances are there's a lot of ultraviolet light in those colors. And if you want to go down that rabbit hole like I did, know that there's a lot of photography sites out there that actually do take pictures in ultraviolet, and it's pretty interesting to look and see what it looks like to them. Okay, so bee habitats. I don't know what kind of a bee this is. We'll call him Grumpy Bee. So for bee habitats, you want to provide water, and know they need to stand to drink, so a shallow source is best. Now this is a bird bath in my front yard, and these guys like to hang around the outside. And last year I put rocks in there. Let me hit this, see if we can get that going. And if you can hear the pounding, I say that they're building in the background. But these guys, I put, these were porous rocks. These are sandstone rocks that hold the water. And my neighbors actually accused me of putting sugar water out there for the bees instead of just plain water. But like I said, once again, very active, not as active this year as they were last year. Okay. Okay, and also, now this isn't scientific either. I know we're just supposed to give you the science information, but I have a fountain and they like to hang around the edge, and there's no bees there, of course. Oh, there's one. Okay, so, but I put wine corks in the fountain because sometimes the bees fall in and sometimes the bees drowned. And I thought, well, if I put corks in there, it might give them a little chance to maybe climb up on something and save themselves. Like I said, not scientific, it's just something that I do. Okay, so bee houses. So habitats. If we're gonna supply habitats, there's bee houses for wood and cavity nesting bees. So if you're going to build one or you're going to buy one, know that they should have holes that correspond to the body size. So 3/16 to 5/16 of an inch is going to be your drill size for your, no, I'm not going to say that, for your bee hole. They don't use blocks that move or are open in the back. And I saw some really cute blocks shaped like bees hung from trees with holes drilled in them, but no, those don't work. They need to have a shaded entrance. The preferred material is wood. And the entrance needs to be out of the prevailing winds because they don't want to have to fight to get in there. And then it's just like you don't want the drafts in your house either. So note that pathogens can be a problem. So if you have a bee house and you can't clean it, try to replace it so you don't spread diseases. And information, now this is good if you're building a bee house or even if you're buying a bee house because they're everywhere these days. You see them at the big box stores and everything. At the Xerces Society has, I found this on there, I found the link on the Berkeley Urban Bee Lab, and I found these two PDF files that you can download that have one nest for native bees and one tunnel nest for native bees. And I kind of like the idea of the tunnel nest for the native bees because that's something that's easily replaceable at the end of the season. Okay, so bare soil for ground nesting bees. Okay, if you've got, this gives you an excuse to keep just a bare space in the back of your yard. You don't have to have everything covered by plants. And you don't even have to have everything covered by mulch because bees will not tunnel, the ground nesting bees will not tunnel through as much as 2 inches of mulch. They will not tunnel through that to build one of these little homes. Here's another one, and I wish this was longer. And this actual sound that these guys make was, is pretty crazy. Not like the pounding on the bees that we're drinking. So yeah, so it gives you an excuse to keep that little spot in the back of your yard with it's just something about bees and dirt. So what about pesticides? Okay, you might think that a lot of people talk about, oh no, I don't use pesticides. I only use the good organic, safer stuff. If you're going to use anything in your yard, anything that's got an active ingredient on the front of it, you're going to want to go and check out that pesticide, even if it's the label that says, oh, safer, organic, whatever it is. You want to go and check out the active ingredient before you apply it. So you're going to go to the IPM, the UC IPM site, to the Home Garden Turf of Landscape Pests. There's the girl in the red shirt. That's where you're going. And to know you're in the right place when you get to that page, there's the girl in the red shirt again. So we have pesticides and alternatives, and there's great things in here. And that's another rabbit hole you can go down. There's biological control, alternatives, but you want to go to pesticides in the home and landscape. And from there, you want to go to the active ingredient database. And that's anything that you apply that's got an active ingredient, it's got to have it on the front. It's got to be listed on the front. And it's usually in a really bad contrast color and too small. So if you're in the store, you have to take it to the door and kind of look at it in the sunlight to see what it actually says. They don't make it real obvious, but it has to be there on the front. So once you find your active ingredient, you go to this, or you go to this page, and it has it broken down by different kinds of what you're going to use, if it's an insecticide, herbicide, fungicide. Then you click on what it is that you plan on using. Now, I picked neem here because neem is something that a lot of people use, and they think that it's totally, totally safe. And it is one of the safer things that you can use. But if you look here, it's got a honeybee listing, and it's got a moderate, and it gives a little 3 there. And it tells you, while it's very low toxicity for people and mammals, and it's low toxicity for beneficials, but honeybees, it's moderate. So what do you find out when you go down here and look at the impact on them, and it tells you when to apply it? So the honeybee ratings for the neem oil, the moderate, it says apply only during late evening, night, or early morning. So you don't want to be spraying it while they are foraging. Now the low, if you find something that's low, and I haven't looked that deep into it to see what actually, what actually is low, but they say you can apply it at any time, but just don't go after the bees with it. Okay, so in short, your bee-friendly garden, you're gonna choose a diversity of floral hosts. Now, this is where the designers hate me because if you've got a landscape designer, they're gonna tell you, okay, go with maybe 3 different plants and group them together. If you have the room, 20 different types of flowering plants is ideal. No, too, is it's hard to find plants that bloom in the fall. So when you go to that list, think about having stuff that's going to bloom over the year, which takes me into flowering times between seasons. Design a garden with structure. Okay, they like a garden with structure. So tall plants in the back, sloping to the smaller ones in the front, and that also helps you to see things. Bees feed in the sun, so plant in the sun, and plant in patches, like I said earlier. Seed annuals early to ensure development. Now, we've got falls coming up right now, and fall is the perfect time to put your wildflower seeds out. It gives them a better chance to get adapted before spring comes around, and it's not bad if you think, oh, it's spring, and that's when everything pops up in the stores. And if you're going to go plant your poppies or whatever, that's not bad. But know that also, if you plant earlier, if you plant in the fall, not only do they have a better chance of establishing, but that it's less likely that you're just supplying really expensive bird seed, because the birds are more populous in the spring too, and I have run into that one. Water regularly. We're not saying overwater, but when plants are stressed, they're going to put their energy into healing and not producing flowers. No pesticides, and consider the plant climate zones. So just because we've got everything from the Sierras to the coast. So just because a plant's a California native doesn't mean it's going to work in your yard. I live in Oak Park, which is like, I think it's about 50 miles from the surface of the sun. So something that is a plant from the Sierras or even the beach isn't going to work in my yard. So a few little things here. Wow, this is going faster than I thought. Okay, so a few little things here that that I found at the end is the sting factor. A lot of people are afraid that they're going to get stung. And bees are vegetarians. They're not like wasps. They're not going to want to, they're not going to go after your ham sandwich, things like that. They're defensive, not aggressive. So what they're doing is they want to defend their hive, the honeybees. They want to defend their hive. So if you're close to their hive, they're going to come after you because they're going to defend it. Now, bees, we know that the honeybees, when they sting you, they die. Native bees are a different story altogether. If you get stung by a native bee, it's not going to die. But native bees are really, really less likely to sting you because they don't have a hive to defend. So unless you're actually swatting at them or you step on them or something like that. So if you find that you're being harassed, look around for a hive nearby. That's usually what it is. My neighbor had a hive in their chimney, and there was an entire summer that I could not go out in the backyard because apparently, and that's probably the summer that I took the picture of the bees on the hummingbird feeder too. You know, apparently anything within maybe 500 feet, I think it is they will go after you. So here's some examples of beehives when you think that everything's fine and you're out walking and you're in nature and you hear the buzzing and things start coming into your face. Look around. This is an older hive. And this is like my gargoyle hive. This hive goes all the way back into this tree here. And I got this picture here from a first grade teacher who took this, which I think is super, super cool. I would love to come across something like this. It's, you notice the white color in the hive. It's because this is brand new. These guys are just starting this hive in this tree. So swarms. Nothing makes people run like a swarm of bees. Okay, they're usually between 5,000 and 20,000 strong. So what they are is they're a hive breaking into two hives with a new queen, and they're looking for a new place to go. So if we get calls like this on the helpline in spring, we usually at least get at least one call of a bee swarm and, you know, oh, these bees landed in my tree, what am I gonna do? So usually this is what a bee swarm looks like when it lands. When this is in your backyard tree, might stay for a few hours, they might stay for a couple days. These bees and the swarm bees, even though it's this big, huge cloud that comes through the neighborhood and it's really loud too, they're less likely to attack. And that is unless, if you're swinging a stick at them or hitting them with the hose, yeah, they're gonna go after you, but they're less likely to attack than those that are protecting a hive. So they're looking for dark cavities with a 4 to 9 gallon volume and at least 9 feet high. Be calm. So, but no, if these bees establish like in your chimney, you have to get rid of them as soon as possible. There's different ways to get rid of them. You can call a bee rescue. People will come and take the bees out without hurting them. You can call an exterminator, which is they're going to come in and they're going to kill the bees and then hope that they get everything out, because if they leave bees in there, they're going to smell in your walls. And it's kind of sad, but it's more expensive to have somebody come out and save your bees, which is pretty logical. You know, the guy's going to come out in his little suit and instead of just shooting something in there and killing them. And it's all determined on money and your heart. Okay, so this was supposed to go 40 minutes, and it's a little short. So anyway, at the helpline, we're there to help. So if you have problems, garden problems, if you're a master gardener, you should be able to look this stuff up yourself. But if you were, you know, feel free to contact us if you're really stuck. Don't call us. We're not there because of the COVID. We're not in the office answering the phone, but the email is open. And no, if you send us an email, make sure that you give us as much information so we're not going back and forth and back and forth. Pictures, we love pictures. If you're going to include pictures, if you have a problem, a picture of the problem area, a far away picture, and then maybe even a picture of everything around the problem so we can tell if there's something close that's going on. Also, tell us if you've sprayed anything, what kind of irrigation you're using, the direction. The more information you give us, it's surprising we get a lot of, my plant is sick, okay? So we get a lot of that. So, you know, if you know the name of the plant, by all means, tell us what it is, because sometimes it's hard to determine with the pictures. And we don't have this guy. And know that we try our hardest, but we're not always able to determine what is wrong. And that is it. And I will leave this up. I guess we're going to take questions if there's questions out there, and I will leave this up. This is the links to all the bee houses and the blogs and the, oh, I did, oh no, I guess I didn't do the photography. I thought maybe I entered the photography in there. So, do we have any questions?
Danny?
Yeah.
Questions? There are questions in the chat box.
Okay, so I don't know how.
Do you want me to read them for you?
Please excuse me. I am. This is my first virtual, and
Do you want me to read them?
Hold on. I'm looking up. Yeah, go ahead, read them, because I don't think I can keep this up and keep up this resource page and find the chat box too. So
Okay, so question number 1, there used to be a bee store in Thousand Oaks called Conejo Bee, where we could buy a package of bees and a queen if needed. We would love to get our hive going again, but I haven't been able to find a local source of bees. What do you suggest?
I suggest the internet. I don't know. And you also might want to check with Ventura County, because I'm not even sure. I don't know a lot about raising bees. I do have a slideshow on that, and I can go through that and see what we have, but I'm not even sure if they allow, if it's legal in certain cities to have, because I know they were having problems with that some cities, it was illegal to have beehives. So I really don't know anything about raising bees. I just know about gardening bees. Sorry. But
Okay.
you can send us an email to the, the helpline, and we'll see what we can find.
Okay, next question. What about using diluted dish soap in a sprayer that you would use for aphids? Is that okay for bees?
I wouldn't use anything like that. They don't tell you what's in dish soap, and dish soap wasn't made as an insecticide. And as much as people use soaps for insecticides, unless it's a actual soap that you buy in the garden center that is a soap, it's going to tell you what's in it, but you don't know what's in it. So aphids are really easy to get rid of just with a stream of water. You might have to go out there a few days, but and and if you're kind of if you're like me, I kind of like to leave some of the aphids on the plants and wait for the natural predators to come in because that's just a downside. But aphids are one of the easiest insects to get rid of. You just hose them off. Once they hit the ground, they're not coming back. You might get new ones back the next day, so it might take a few days. But just a strong spray of water will get rid of your aphids.
Okay, now this question is not related to bees. So if I'll just say it, if you know the answer, great.
And I'll tell you, go to the helpline.
Go to the helpline, yeah. Okay, how to control grasshoppers eating pepper plants?
Oh, I have no idea. Like I said, that's something that you can send us. So you know what? I am going to be on the helpline next week, so feel free, and I will research that. I found my pepper plants are the only thing that survived in my yard because the critters have eaten everything else, and they don't seem to like the pepper plants. So I haven't had a problem with that, but I can. And the UCIPM site is great too. You can always go in there and look for grasshoppers and see what you can do for them. And you can always hose them out and hope they go to your neighbor's house.
Okay. Next question. There's a lot of comments in the group chat, but I'm only giving you the questions. So
okay.
Everybody can read. Hopefully you can get to the chat room and read the information that's there from other people.
Yeah, is everybody okay if I take down this screen and then I can kind of look?
I would leave it. It's a great
okay.
for people copying it.
Okay.
How do I safely get rid of ants?
Ants. Ants you wanna bait your ants. Because you can't if they're ants outside, like if they're on your trees, a good thing is a sticky trap that you put on. It's a sticky stuff that you put on your trees.
Tanglefoot.
Like Tanglefoot or something like that. If they're inside, I had ants in my kitchen for years and years, and I couldn't get rid of them. And finally, I just caulked around between the countertop and the backsplash, and I haven't had ants all summer. So sometimes it's that easy as caulking to keep them out of the house. But if they're in the yard, you want to keep them out of your trees because they are going to farm little insects like the ACP and the aphids and stuff like that. They're going to fight. What they do to farm them is they fight off the good guys. So you want to make sure they're not on your trees. And there are sources, and I believe on the IPM site we do have sources for bait stations, because ants are like ants are like icebergs. The little bit that you see above the ground is nothing in compared to what's underneath the ground. So you want to bait them because you want to kill the whole colony. And there's baits out there that are the baits that are safe.
Okay, next question. Do wasps pollinate?
Yes, wasps pollinate almost anything that flies. Even the drone bees, the male bees that don't actually go out and collect pollen because they don't have that little pollen basket, even those accidentally pollinate just by rubbing on a flower or something like that. So yeah, there's good wasps and bad wasps too. I mean, as far as the sting factor, there's wasps that go about their business and don't go after you at all. And then there's the, what was that in the news recently? The
The monster wasp?
Whatever, yeah, whatever it was that was coming after to attack us all. So some of them are like that, but not all of them are bad.
Okay, so another question. How long do bees live normally?
A honeybee a queen bee usually, I want to say 5 years, don't quote me on this. Bees, and I did read about this, about how long they live, and I don't remember. I think a honeybee will live about a year. But like I said, don't quote me on it. That information, I believe it was in the UC Berkeley Urban Bee Lab has all that kind of information in it.
Okay.
And the ones, the cavity ones, they only live a season, usually. So if you've got bee houses and stuff like that, you're going to want to clean them out every season, because the same guys aren't coming back.
Okay, and it looks like the last question, will the ant bait kill lizards and birds?
No, the baits, if you look at the safer baits, which are, oh, help me with what they have in them. The safer baits do not. If you go with something that's not a chemical, what is?
Boric acid.
Pardon?
Boric acid. B-O-R.
Yes. Thank you. The boric acid baits are safe. They're not gonna hurt your. Yeah, you don't want to go anything with big chemicals or anything in them that are, if the dog gets it or whatever. I know I've had a problem with sometimes the raccoons will take off with the bait station.
Oh, great.
Drag the sticky stuff, and it hasn't hurt them at all. They keep coming back for more. They like the sweet stuff too.
Okay, one more question.
Okay.
Are houses for bees and pollinators okay to use? I read recently not to use them. Also,
Okay.
when and how do you clean them if they're okay to use?
Okay, there's in the Xerces Society has I believe that was the link that gave the information where you clean them with a diluted solution of bleach, just like you would your bird bath, and usually that's a 1 to 10 solution. 1 part of bleach per 10 parts of water. There was a lot of questioning when the bee houses first came out at the big box stores. People were saying, oh no, these aren't right. These are the wrong size holes and stuff like that, and these aren't good for the bees. And that's why you go to those handouts from the Xerces Society about what you're looking for in a bee house. But yeah, bee houses are fine. You can provide bee houses. The question I have, what you see a lot in rural areas where people have actually drilled holes into fence posts and stuff like that. And the question I have is, how good is that if, because there's not somebody out there cleaning those.
Okay, are there any other questions? Nope.
Okay, well, let's close this. Thank you, everybody. Oh, I can see the chat now.
Yeah, there's lots of good comments to read.
Okay. Okay, so like I said, thank you, everybody. This has been an experience. This is the first time I've done a virtual, and without help from people when I try and have my senior moments and can't find a word. And this is also, and with my COVID hair, I haven't been to a hairdresser since 2019. So I appreciate everybody sticking around. Thank you for being nice.
Thank you, Danny.
And thank you.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.